So yeah, hi everyone, I'm Catherine. I'm the clinical lead and one of the psychologists within Forensic CAMHS. I won't spend too much time going over the history of us because I'm cautious of time, but there was mention around provider collaboratives in the first presentation, and that's where we get our funding from. So our provider collaborative is in the Southwest, and Forensic CAMHS is a national service. There's 13 of us, there's 13 regional services, and we are in the Southwest South patch, which can feel a bit of a mouthful. And we're a very small team, so I don't need to go over details about who's who exactly, but we are at MPT in that we have representation from psychology, psychiatry, nursing, and social work, and hopefully soon occupational therapy as well. But we're going out to advert for that post. So that's who we are. And I put this slide in, I think sometimes to make people feel sorry for us, just to let people know that we're a very small team, but we cover a very big patch geographically. So we're all employed by Somerset Foundation NHS Trust, but we cover Somerset, Devon and Cornwall young people. So whilst we're based in Somerset, we also do cover those other young people too. And in terms of who we work with, so our referral criteria has two bits to it really. So for it to be Forensic CAMHS business, a young person has to present with what we describe as a high risk of harm to other people. And that can look like different things really, and it depends on each individual young person. But normally the things that we'd be looking at are harmful sexual behaviour. So that would be sexual behaviour that's developmentally inappropriate and is causing harm either to the young person or to other young people. Significant violence, and generally we'll be looking at violent behaviour present in more than one setting. So that could be home, school, out in the community, or violence which is kind of considered serious. So we have had young people referred to us who've only committed, say one violent act in one setting, but it's been of a significant nature. So it might be something like a stabbing. So the violence bit has to be either kind of quite serious or occurring in multiple settings. And then the final bit of our referral criteria related to risk of harm is fire setting. So if that's been a behaviour of the young person, sometimes our referrals, our young people might do one of those things. So there might be harmful sexual behaviour present, or violence, or fire setting. Sometimes it might be all three or a combination of. So that's the risk bit to our referral criteria. And then the other bit we'll be looking at is the mental health need. And this isn't as, I guess, strict or concrete as some other services, in that we will also look at things like developmental trauma and attachment. That would come under that bracket. So it can be formal mental health diagnoses, so things like depression, anxiety or psychosis, but it doesn't have to be. It can also include developmental trauma and things like insecure attachment. And then also neurodevelopmental needs, so young people who are neurodiverse. And again, that can be different things. It could be an autistic young person or a young person with a diagnosis of ADHD. And similar to the risk stuff, often, more often than not, because human beings are complex beings, young people might have mental health diagnoses, they might be neurodiverse, and they more often than not will have developmental trauma in their background. So that's our referral criteria. There has to be the risk bit and then the mental health bit. And that's our cohort of young people. So in terms of what we do, I guess the clear message for me is that we aren't an alternative to CAMHS. We're viewed to be very much an add-on. Our main customer tends to be the professional network. So because there's, I think there's 6 of us in the team at the moment, and we cover Somerset, Devon and Cornwall, we're very much our main model of operating is an advice and consultation model. And that will be bringing together the professional networks involved with the young people and thinking about things like care planning. Sharon, I can see your question. Any professional can refer to Forensic CAMHS. And so, it's very much around supporting the professional network in terms of their ways of working, risk assessment and management. That might also be supporting transition. So that could be in and out of secure settings, or transitions into adulthood. So trying to make sure that the professional network are aligned in their thinking, but also the right people are involved, the right people are at the table in terms of supporting the young person. We often will bring together kind of lots of reports and might put that into something which is a bit more accessible for the professional network, because often these young people might have had several different assessments. There might have been several people involved historically and currently, and that can become quite confusing. So bringing together kind of information in one place is something we will often do. Sometimes we're not a crisis service, but sometimes we will get involved in the kind of supporting urgent recommendations if there's queries around, say, young persons on the edge of care or on the edge of going into secure settings. And our main kind of bread and butter is psychological formulation. So really understanding what's happened to a young person and what's bringing about the presenting behaviours of concern, why they're coming about, thinking about their background, kind of historically, current triggers, and then with that information, what's going to be useful for the future in terms of managing risk, but also the young person, being happy and healthy. And we do get involved in specific risk assessment, but again, that's very much dependent on the young person. And we also do, on a case-by-case basis, offer direct work, and that again will be dependent on need. And that can be things like assessment around autism, kind of more of a psychology clinical assessment, things like cognitive assessments. It's very much case by case, and generally speaking, we'd only get involved in direct assessment if local services cannot complete that work, and part of our job is kind of getting services involved and completing those bits of work, but we do have the option to provide assessments if they are kind of viewed to be clinically required. And sometimes we might get involved in that if there's a long waiting list, for example, and it feels like having some clarity around a young person diagnosis would actually be very important in the here and now in terms of them accessing resources, things like that. I think we've put in the slide, so yeah, we don't offer direct work to most of our young people. Most of our work involves supporting the professional network, but we can do that. And that would always follow initial referral and initial consultation. So we'd only ever get involved directly if we'd offered consultation in the first instance. I can see a few things have popped up on the chat, but I'll probably, if I've got time, I'll answer them at the end, or if not, I'm happy to be emailed and we can clarify some things. So in terms of referrals, like I've said, any professional can refer a young person to us, and all the referrals go through the CAMHS single point of access team, the SPA team. We've got the link there to our website, which has a referral form, which is right at the bottom of the web page. And I've also included our kind of team inbox there, where we're happy to have conversations if there's any questions that we can't answer today. The other thing I'm mindful isn't on the slides is that we follow young people around, which I think is very important. So say if there's a Somerset young person who then goes into a care placement, say up country somewhere, say Liverpool, for example, we wouldn't pull out at that point. We follow young people around because we're mindful of things like keeping professional network involved. That can be really tricky when people have moved around the county. That's where drift can often happen. So we do have the luxury of following people around. So that wouldn't be a reason for someone not to refer to us.